everyone, today we're going to look at a brief introduction of order of operations. There are a few rules to remember when you're tackling problems. First and foremost, we do it as in the brackets first. Afterwards, we want to look at the four basic operations: addition, subtraction, division, and multiplication. And we kind of want to think of these as like well, I think of them as tiers. So, in one tier you have division and multiplication, and that has to be done before any addition or subtraction. So, if you ever see a division or multiplication sign, that has to be done before any addition or subtraction can be completed. Now, in terms of division and multiplication, which one do you do first? Well, you do what you see first in terms of reading the expression left to right. And that same concept is addition and subtraction as well. You do what you see first, reading the expression left to right. So one of the things we want to kind of look at is there's no reason why I can't kind of just type this in the calculator: 2.2 minus 3.6, close bracket, plus 14 divided by 2.5. plus 3, close bracket. And when we evaluate this, we get the right answer of 7.2. It doesn't take a lot of effort to enter in brackets and addition signs and numbers within a calculator correctly. So what we're going to be looking at for order of operations is what exactly did the calculator do here? Like, how does it come up with the answer of 7.2? And understand that it's following the order of operations. So we want to be able to come out with the same answer as the calculator does. And I hope you see the difference when we do it ourselves. So we're going to start. We're going to examine this particular expression, and we're going to notice that there's two sets of brackets. So the way I kind of pick this apart is I take a look at this set of brackets and say whatever's in that set of brackets, I have to do that. And then the same for this set of brackets. So I'm going to do those two things first. And so we'll start with the left bracket, 2.2 minus 3.6. So 2.2 minus 3.6 should be, I always like to double check, but I think negative 1.4. Yeah. So negative 1.4 is what this comes out to be equal to. Okay, so that's the entirety of that bracket. So after I evaluate that, I always just kind of write in the next line down what that expression evaluates to. After that, I have an addition sign, and now I'm going to evaluate what this is. I'm going to kind of do this in a couple steps. I have to know what is inside of what this expression inside of these brackets evaluates to, but I also now have to actually look at 14 divided by 2.5 plus 3. Well, do I do 14 divided by 2.5 and then add 3, or do I do 2.5 add 3 and then take 14 and divide it by whatever that is? Because those are really the two different options you have here. And what you want to come back to is the order of operations that says before I do any addition and subtraction, I have to do the division or multiplication. So I'm going to take 14 and divide it by 2.5. I'm going to get 5.6 there. So then I usually just write 5.6 plus 3. Okay. So now, after I figured that out, I'm going to say negative 1.4 plus 8.6. That would be 5.6 plus 3. And you'll see I continue writing brackets, but at this point I actually don't need those. What's inside of that bracket is 8.6, so I can just say negative 1.4 plus 8.6, and that will actually give me positive 7.2. So that's my answer, and that's actually, if you recall in the calculator, that's actually what we got as an answer here, 7.2. So the calculator does this for you, but we're trying to examine what it is the calculator is actually doing. So let's take a look at another example. So 14.875 divided by 4.75 plus 1.2 plus 2.5 times 0.2 minus 1.84. So I just want to be clear, how much of this should I use a calculator for, and how much of it should I not use a calculator for? And I guess the ideal, from my perspective, is we don't just punch this whole thing in the calculator and press enter. What we actually put into the calculator is anything that we can't do in our head or quickly, I guess you could say. And in that sense, if I look at this, I need to know what to do first. That's the idea. So I'll identify that there's brackets here, so I should add those two things together. And sometimes, like, we can ignore everything else outside of those brackets. Let's just figure out what that is, because that's going to make things simpler. So this is going to be 5.95. So I have 14.875 divided by 5.95. Then I'm going to add something to this quantity here. 2.5 times 0.2 minus 1.84. Well, in this case, I have to do 2.5 times 0.2 first. That should give me a half, which it does. So plus 0.5 minus 1.84. So I've kind of condensed this portion as well as this here. So next I want to take a look at this expression. I have 14.875 divided by 5.95 plus 0.5 minus 1.84. So the first thing I have to do is my division here. So 14.875 divided by 5.95. And again, this is really important for me to be as clear as possible. 2.5 times 0.2, I can kind of do that in my head. I can see ways to do that without actually punching into the calculator. I do kind of just to make sure. I try to do it by hand or in my head before I have a calculator give me the answer. This particular expression here, that's why calculators exist. I don't want to do that. I don't think anybody wants to do that. It can be done, but we have a tool to make that so much easier on us. So 14.875 divided by 5.95. We get 2.5. So 2.5 plus 0.5 minus 1.84. Again, I can do 2.5 plus a half on a calculator, but I can also just kind of think about it and say, okay, 2.5 plus 1/2 is 3. So 3 minus 1.84. And then that should give me, I believe, 1.16. And I'll double check that. 1.16. Okay. So I hope you're seeing kind of how you balance doing things on paper and doing things in a calculator. It's, I think, going to be different for everybody. Just kind of keep that in mind. But I also hope that as we go through examples, you're kind of seeing the idea of which operations you should do first. Okay, let's take a look at another example here. So 3 times 2.5 plus 42.6 divided by 6. Okay, so what I want to point out is that this addition symbol should be kind of the last thing we do, seeing as we have multiplication and division signs within that expression. So that's going to be the last thing that I do. I'm going to have two numbers. I'm going to have whatever 3 times 2.5 is, and I'm going to add it to whatever 42.6 divided by 6 is. And that's kind of just how I see how this works, and that I think explaining that might help. So 3 times 2.5, you get 7.5 plus 42.6 divided by 6. That might be one to check. Turns out to be 7.1. So 7.5 added to 7.1. So, I kind of evaluate this, gives me 7.1. I evaluate this, gives me 7.5. Add them together, I get 14.6. So we'll keep going here. We'll do one more example. So 14.4. Actually, let's do this on a separate sheet of paper without pen marks and maybe a little bit more room to see what's happening here. 14.4 plus 3 subtracted 1.5 divided by 3 times by 6 minus 2.55 times 0.654 times by 2. So as you can see, this is quite an expression, and it seems very scary at first, but the whole point of order of operations is break things down, make it simpler as you go, and eventually it becomes a very easy expression to deal with. So let's take a look at this, and what I'll note is that whatever is inside of this set of brackets, the very end of things, I'm just going to double that. So even though it's this long chain of operations, that times 2 really doesn't factor into anything until the very end. So I can kind of just forget about it in a sense, and always just tag it on the end without actually thinking about how it affects anything until the very, very end. So let's take a look at this, and let's deal with what I can deal with first. That's going to be figuring out that I'm going to have 14.4 plus whatever this equals minus whatever that equals. Okay, so let's just keep that in mind. So 14.4. Well, we'll break this down. 3 subtract 1.5. That's 1.5 over 3 multiplied by 6. Subtract. I'm going to do this right now. 2.55 multiplied by 0.654. Again, I truly would encourage you to use a calculator for this. There's no reason not to. And I get that times 2. Okay, so now what? We'll still have to figure out what this is, and then we'll add it to 14.4, then take away the 1.6677. Okay, 1.5 divided by 3. I want to double check that that's a half. So we have 14.4 plus 0.5 times 6 minus 1.6677 multiplied by 2. Next up, we'll double check that 0.5 times 6 is 3 minus 1.6677 times 2. And now we have kind of what I was talking about, 14.4 plus this whole thing just ended up being 3. And then this ended up being that 1.6677. So now I'm going to take this, and in terms of addition and subtraction, I kind of just do whichever one I see first, left to right. Well, you may say, okay, well, what about this multiplication? Don't I have to multiply before addition and subtraction? You'll still note that this is all in brackets, so I have to figure out what's in the brackets before I do any multiplication or division. So 14.4 plus 3, that's 17.4, minus 1.6677 times 2. So 15.7. Seven, 3, 2, 3. And then that ends up getting multiplied by 2. So we end up with 31.4646. That's our answer for example 4. Now, that should be everything you need to know in terms of order of operations. Just keep in mind the basic rules here. Do what's in the brackets first, followed by your division or multiplication, followed by your addition or subtraction.